Hi, my name is Natalie Crane. I'm 23 years old. I'm 5'7". I'm available for the duration of this contract as well as all callback dates, and I am sad. What up? I'm Natalie Crane. My voice sounds so deep right now. Okay. Welcome back to Mental Health in Musical Theater, episode 2. I'm Natalie Crane, host and creator. And before I start rambling, my freaking editing software that I'm using to edit my podcast episodes deleted half of the interview that is about to be in this episode with Jack. Pissed. Absolutely pissed. Fuming. Steam is coming out of my ears pissed about it. Have done everything I can to try and get it back, but it simply disappeared into the stratosphere, so it's gone, and really upset because we had a lot of great things to say at the end of that interview. But I'm going to use the 20 minutes that I did lose to run my mouth. I am going to be frank with you all right now. I have had a Celsius at 5 p.m., which is now about 2 hours ago. My consumption of this Celsius was after I worked an 8-hour shift in which I didn't sit down. I think I sat down twice within the duration of that 8-hour shift. My survival job that I work is a barista at a coffee and bistro, and it is a full-time job for me because I need one, and it requires me to walk around and stand pretty much the whole time. So I've been awake since that's a lie. I've been awake since 4:15 in the morning. And after my 8-hour shift, which ended around 2:15 p.m., I was like, I want to go to the gym because I want to rip my upper body. It's an upper body day. If you didn't know this, you wouldn't know this because I haven't said anything about it on this podcast. I lift weights pretty regularly. I love it. It makes me feel badass. So I was in the mood to fool around at the gym, my Planet Fitness. And of course, after my shift, I was tired as fuck. And so I was like, okay, this is what it's all about, Natalie. You love this. You love working like this and pushing yourself to your limits because it makes you feel good. And it makes you feel like you did something and accomplished something today. So I rolled up to the gym, pounded a Celsius. It was the peach vibe one. Peachy vibes. Good. My stomach immediately upset. Immediately rose to level 10. But I was like, whatever. I'm going to keep going. And it was the time of day where Planet Fitness is the most busy because it's after everyone gets off of work. And all the gym bros were there, of course. But I was there with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was in that gym bro mindset because of that Celsius. And I was there to pump some iron. And so I did my upper body workout and then some abs. And I literally was about to shit myself. So that's when I decided to leave because Celsius, I don't know what was going through my head, but Celsius always makes my stomach hurt. There's never been a time where I've had a Celsius where my stomach hasn't been torn the fuck up from it. So I did my workout, came home, and I did feel the effects of the Celsius during the gym workout, but I feel it more now because I feel like I actually just filmed 5 different auditions and submitted them because of this Celsius. Like, I'm not going to chalk it up to anything other than this Celsius from where I received my motivation because that is where it came from. So Celsius, do not sponsor me because I cannot consume your products anymore because my gut lining will simply no longer exist. Anyways, that scenario that I am still currently experiencing has a lot to do with this episode, which is the musical theater grind and like the grind mentality. I wanted to be transparent with y'all today. I've been experiencing a lot of emotional instability this past week because of this podcast. I talked about it on the first episode. I am a perfectionist, and as soon as I released the first episode, I was very excited and pumped about my friends listening to it, and I received a lot of good feedback, but I also kept listening to it over and over and over again and nitpicking and criticizing every single thing about it. And I was like, okay, seems familiar. This is not uncommon behavior for me. And I should have known that I was going to behave in this manner because I literally do this every time I film a self-tape. I watch my reels constantly, making notes of what I can change and what I should change. So am my worst critic, like a lot of us. And so I don't know why I didn't think that this would happen, but it most certainly is happening. Something about me is I've always been really insecure about speaking in public and like speaking as myself. And I've always felt that I wasn't good at articulating things, and I have trouble speaking in front of people because I get anxious and then my mind just goes blank. And I thought this podcast would help me work through that fear and work against my thoughts about myself in that regard. But of course, those insecurities were all coming to the surface as I listened to the episode. Now, needless to say, I have had a good cry about it and several hours of talking through it with people that love me and support me and care for me. And bottom line is, this is something that I feel passionate about, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I am doing my best, and that's what matters. And I hope I can help a lot of people because that's all I want. And at the end of the day, I'm still here doing it. So this is me telling those voices in my head, and maybe your voices that you have in your head that are similar to mine, to mind their own business, because who's the one showing up at the end of the day? Me. And you. Y'all want to know what girl dinner I'm eating right now? I made a bag of microwave popcorn, half of a watermelon, 3 eggs scrambled with chili flakes, salt, and oregano for some reason. Don't know why. It's really good though. Snap peas from Trader Joe's, and the vegan creamy dill dressing from Trader Joe's. Absolutely delicious, bizarre girl dinner. Love. One thing about me is I am in recovery from 10 plus years of dealing with all sorts of eating disorders. The most recent relapse I had was a bout of really bad anorexia. And I'm about to hit 7 months of fully being in recovery. So this is my girl dinner. Don't hate. I'm enjoying the foods that I didn't allow myself to have for the longest time. So yeah, let's talk about this grind mentality, shall we? I'm going to start us off with just a solo chat, and then we'll get into the convo that I had with Jack about the MT grind and what that means to him and for him. So this past week, and like up until I released the first episode, I have been overworking myself. At the time, I didn't consider it that. I considered it just me working really hard on something that I was really excited and passionate about. I was waking up in the morning, immediately getting my computer, immediately editing what I could from the first episode, and now this episode, making sure it was what I wanted it to be. Because there's a lot that goes into podcasting. If you're new at it, like, it takes a lot of shit to put it all together, and so I had to navigate that, and I also editing, and I was just being so anal about every single thing. You can probably hear it in the editing that I was doing, the incessant editing that I did for that first episode. Anyways, so I was just really being annoyingly anal about it. And it took, I probably spent like 7 hours editing that first episode, like total. Not all at once, but total. And that's kind of ridiculous. And looking back, I'm like, Natalie, really? I understand that it means a lot to you, Nat, but like, come on, 7 fucking hours. And there would be times where my boyfriend would come home and I would just be like hunched over in this exact spot that I'm sitting in right now, which is my kitchen counter island, like hunched over like a little gremlin on my computer. It's like dark as hell in here. I haven't showered, like just not self-care going on. And I've also started a new job where I'm working like 30 plus hours a week. And so I simply have just been working my ass off recently, and love. I've been thinking about how good it's made me feel because I'm working so hard. And I'm also thinking of like, damn, I'm really neglecting like basic needs as a human being. because of how hard I've been working. I'm also considering what I said in the first podcast about how I'm such a huge advocate for peace, but then I'm literally never not doing something. I haven't been not doing something these past 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm really being a hypocrite right now. Like, why am I not reading a chapter of my book? Why am I not taking a little bath? Like, why am I not allowing myself peace because of, my work? And I was like, well, it's because, of course, you are succumbing to this grind mentality because that's just what you know. I'm not ashamed of working hard. I've always been a really hard worker, and I will always be a very hard worker, but I don't know how to balance things quite yet. And that's just me. This is just me being real. Like, I'm speaking to myself when I'm speaking to you guys as well. It helps me to hear myself saying, you need to chill the fuck out because you are working so much that you don't have any groceries in your house. I cleaned my cat's litter box today and it was so fucking gross. I was like, Natalie, this is unacceptable. Like, you cannot neglect your everyday life obligations because you want your podcast to be perfect. That's just not reasonable. And so I'm coming on here to say all this because this is what I mean when I'm talking about the grind mentality and it kind of being unhealthy for me. It's unhealthy for me when I get this way because I'm neglecting basic needs of mine. And this isn't to say that I don't enjoy working because I genuinely do love working. Theater, normal person job, podcast. Like, I just really enjoy occupying my mind with things other than my crippling anxiety and depression, which is, I think, why a lot of people succumb to the grind mentality because it distracts them from coming face to face with who they really are. So it's totally okay to acknowledge that you are a hard worker and you tend to neglect things because of how hard you work. And it's also okay to acknowledge that, like, it puts a damper on things when you aren't working. I don't know how to do things in moderation. If I obtain a new interest, I will wear that interest out until I'm unable to physically or mentally withstand it anymore. I have a history of over-exercising, and that's why I was constantly getting injured is because, well, one, I was struggling with my eating, but I was also exercising so much to where my body couldn't handle it anymore. And I'll just go to the extremes for shit because I have a black and white brain. Like, my brain thinks it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. It's so hard for me to find a gray area in anything that I do because that's just how my brain works. And so for me, with the grind mentality, I simply, it's either all or nothing. Like, I'm either completely submersed in my work or I'm laying face down on the floor crying and not wanting to get up ever again because I'm so tired and I just can't do it anymore. Part of my journey is finding the balance between that because, that's not great. And it's obviously caused a lot of issues in my life. But I just wanted to say that so maybe you could hear it from someone else besides inside of your own head that other people struggle with balance because I sure as hell do. Something else that I've been really overthinking about is I think when it comes down to it in terms of my brain and how I function, I am a very high functioning mentally ill person, and I think a lot of us are like that in the sense where I know I have a fucked up brain, but I'll still like grind the shit out of whatever I'm doing because I have to put absolutely everything I have into everything that I do because that's just who I am. I don't like half-ass anything, and it's either that or I simply can't do anything at all when I'm low functioning. But needless to say, it goes back and forth, and I've been living in my high functioning brain for a while, but there are days where I'm just like, that's fake. Like, I know that it's not when it comes down to it, but I'm also like, where are you getting that energy for? Like, you don't know how to work hard. You're lazy as fuck. All you want to do is lay in your bed, and you don't understand what it actually takes to be a hard worker. And so I go back and forth between feeling that way about myself and being like, no, I am very worthy of everything that I have. And I've worked extremely hard for everything that I have, and I am smart and capable. But, they're never really balanced. But I really wanted to make this a structured thing, a structured show, and I think it will be, but I also need to stop being so picky about how I'm doing this because I simply can't make it perfect. And I think the more that I edit myself, the more that I criticize myself, and I just simply can't handle that right now because what does that do for anybody involved? Anyways, now that you've had a little inside look into where my brain's been chilling for the past 2 weeks, I'd love to introduce you to the next segment of this episode, where my friend Jack and I will extend this solo chat that I've been having with you into a duo chat about the MT grind. So without further ado, here you go. Today I have my very first and most special guest, my bestie, Jack Bausch. Thanks for joining, Jack.
Thank you for having me. I'm psyched to be here. Absolutely.
So excited to have you.
Yeah, it's an honor. I'm very, very excited.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, where you are right
Totally.
now. Just give us a little
Totally.
overview.
Yeah. All right, a little bit about me. I'm Jack.
Yes.
I majored in musical theater at my BFA. I graduated in 2022. I've been traveling around the country doing gigs and working at various different theaters in various parts of the US since then, which I'm very, very grateful for. And yeah, I mean, I've just kind of been living on that hustle. I'm from Western New York. I am a queer artist, so I've been doing a lot of kind of queer representation stuff. I'm trying to advocate for the LGBTQ plus community in my work. And I'm currently out in Cincinnati working with the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company in the world premiere of Stephen Dietz's Gaslight, which is cool. A
Yes.
little shameless plug.
Okay, not the OG gaslighter. Thank God.
Yeah, right.
Love.
Typecast.
Yes. And who are you playing in
That's
that show?
policeman number one. Thank you
Period.
very much. It's an
Okay,
honor.
I'm having
Get
a
that
cop on
jacket.
my podcast for the
I
first
know, you're
episode.
honored first guest, right?
Love.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. That's what I'm doing. That's kind of what I've been doing and what I'm doing now.
Awesome. That's so cool. I've heard of Gaslight for a few years now, but I didn't know that it hadn't been premiered yet.
Yeah,
Like
so there's
regionally?
actually there's like an original production by
Okay.
Patrick Hamilton called like Angel Street, and then there was a
Yeah.
play, like a 50s play called Gaslight. So that's been around for
Maybe I'm thinking
70
of
years.
the 50s play then.
Yeah, totally. And there's a movie too.
Yeah.
And so Stephen Dietz has just kind of written a new adaptation
Oh,
um,
okay.
about it and has called it Gaslight because it's been in the news for the last few years. So it's
Yeah.
been really interesting to see the connections and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the viability to what we now consider to be that term and how it applies to
Right.
the show.
And so how much of the original show is in the new adaptation?
A lot,
A
actually.
lot?
I mean, so basically the whole plot is the same. It's the
Okay.
exact same show. It's just he's basically modernized the text. He's written it in the way that Stephen Dietz has written a lot of his other plays and things like that in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the dialogue and the script itself. It's been a really cool process to experience being in the room with a playwright of intellect like him and being able to learn the aspect of premiering a show. And of course, he's workshopped it for the last few years, but even now in rehearsals, he's changing lines as we go, and one word will change the entire sentiment of
Yeah.
the scene. It's crazy. It's
That's
crazy.
so cool that you're working in the room with him. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he was there for like the first week, like table work and
Mm-hmm.
like starting and blocking and all that, and that's when we did a lot of kind of like still like continuing to edit. And
Mm-hmm.
he was there to experience a lot of the blocking and work with the director, who she's also brilliant. Her name's
Mm-hmm.
Courtney Sale, and they've worked together. They knew each other before, apparently, but yeah, it's been a really weird and interesting process. That's part of the reason I was grateful to do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because even though I'm literally playing like spirit carrier, like ensemble number one,
Mm-hmm.
getting the opportunity to be in the room like that is so, yeah,
Absolutely.
super
Just
thankful.
being
Yeah.
able to be a part of something original like that is just always an honor.
Yeah, so cool, very, very
Yeah.
fun, and the people are great. All the performers are phenomenal, and I love
Mm-hmm.
Cincy Shakes. Cincinnati's great, and yeah, it's been a great experience.
Yeah. How long have you been working with Cincinnati Shakes? What other works have you done there?
So earlier this year, I got a job with their spring tour. So I did their spring educational tour with 5 other folks,
Mm-hmm.
and we did Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, and that was a great experience. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door,
Mm.
because, as you know, it's really hard to break into these companies
Absolutely.
without doing
Absolutely.
like an apprenticeship or an internship, whatever, a tour.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's part of the reason I did it, and it was a great gig, and I got to do some Shakespeare shows that I love and had never had the chance to do. And then through doing that, I auditioned for their main stage season, and now I'm back for 2 shows in the fall.
So cool. Jack actually originated the role of Lysander in A Midsummer Night's Dream in 1595, if anyone was interested in knowing that.
Right.
No. So Jack and I actually met. We were doing a production of Midsummer Night's Dream in Maine together this past summer. And
Hmm.
I actually reached out to Jack via Instagram DMs before the contract even began, just to like assess vibes and stuff. And Jack and I immediately clicked and became friends. And while we were in Maine, we had a lot of conversations about what we're about to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everyone has their different interpretations and opinions and experiences with the performance industry in general. But why don't you just tell me what the musical theater grind means to you, or your definition of what that
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, like you said, I think there's so many different mentalities for it because everybody operates in such different ways. And one of the things you and I have bonded over
Mm,
at length is kind of the way that we approach it similarly or have a similar mindset, which is nice. And I think for me, the MT grind and the hustle is a lot about the ability to, or the need, or the feeling of necessity to constantly be working, whether
yes.
that is in a gig or for a gig, that aspect of just always being on Actors Access or Playbill and
Yes.
trying to submit to things, or even when you're on a contract, you and I are recording things when
Mm,
we're in Maine for
yeah,
jobs in the fall, and I think that's just kind of the career and the hustle, and
absolutely.
that's what the grind is for me.
Yeah.
Do you
So,
agree?
yes, absolutely. How does that make you feel? What is your opinion on this mentality and mindset that we've been trained to exist in?
I think the aspect of it that you said about we have kind of been trained to expect it, and I have two really, really unapologetic opinions about this. The first kind of unwavering opinion is that it is really hard. It takes a lot of work to be mentally healthy and also accomplish this kind of idea of an MT grind, or even
Mm-hmm.
a grind at all as an actor, or performer, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Because all of the things that you are doing to really give 100% to that constant application process. In order to do that, you have to give up other elements of your life. And there are balances, and it's possible, and a lot of people do it successfully, blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
Blah blah blah.
But it's hard. But
It
it's
is.
hard
Yeah.
to also then be mentally healthy, which it takes a lot of work in itself. The balance of those things I have found to be an insane struggle. So that's the first part. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the
Absolutely.
second unapologetic opinion is something that I maybe am in the minority of, but I love the hustle.
You
You
are
know me.
not in the minority, and I would
Okay,
love to get more
okay.
into this because the
Oh,
addiction of
and
it.
right, right,
Literally, it's
yes.
so
And
addictive.
I love it. I
Yes.
love it. I love it. I love it. I really do. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you need to in
Yes.
order to find success.
Yeah.
I don't fundamentally believe it's possible to really be successful unless you're like a nepo baby, or you have
Mm.
just like an immense amount of God-given talent because you are who you are, your parents were who they were, which
Exactly.
some people do,
Hmm.
and I'm envious. And so for those of us that don't have that, you really have to work for it. And I'm very glad that I love to work,
Yes.
because if I didn't, one, this is not the career for me,
Mm-mm.
but two, it would be real hard for me to not only get jobs, but to even feel confident in my, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm already insecure enough, you know what I mean? That
Real.
mental health, like
Real.
I gotta
Yeah.
hustle to feel good about myself.
Absolutely. I guess my next question is how or has your mentality of the grind culture shifted since you were in college and your undergrad versus now? What are the differences in what you
Mm,
were expecting versus what is reality in terms of the culture and whatnot?
yeah. Well, in college, I definitely, which is going on 2 years for me now, there was a lot of praise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is still levels of that, having graduated and like being in quote unquote the real world or
Yeah.
whatever. But that praise, the sacrifices that came from it were minor because the stakes were lower. A lot of college hustle is like, gotta audition for these main stages. And, I'm gonna make myself super busy all the time because I can, and there's a bunch of things to do. And I'm also working with all my friends, so I'm still seeing them and all these things, right? Which is great. And that's the nice thing about the biome of college is not only are you working all the time on something on top of like classes and extra work you have to do, but you're also just around, you're living with your friends, you're working with your friends or your partners, or whatever. Everybody is just part of the community because the community is small. And then you leave college And I have continued to push myself to work really hard, and that has resulted in me having a consistent work, which has been great. And with that consistent work, one of the biggest differences is you're not around your friends and your partner.
Mm.
And I have learned the hard way through a lot of lost friendships and relationships and partnerships that sometimes you cannot have it all. And I really thought leaving college, it was possible for me to have it all. And I think that that was a misconception because it was easy to have it all when I was there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Big fish in a small pond, great friends, great
Mm-hmm.
people. Of course, college has its own drama and problems, right?
Right,
It's not like it was
right,
all happy-go-lucky, easy stuff, um, you know, as an upperclassman. But
right.
when I left, I was like, you know what? I made the most of this 4 years, and I really got off on the right foot with all the work I did to carry this into the professional world. And then I got out there, and all of the work that I had done, I had a minor quarter life crisis earlier this year, having been a year post grad, and basically thinking to myself, you know, at the time, I was like, I have thought about only work and getting work for 4 years
Mm-hmm.
and hustling for college auditions and then getting into college, re auditioning, and then doing summer stock work all through COVID and the years prior and apprenticeships and all that jazz and leaving school and doing it again and then doing it again for the 6 months that followed. And I had this life crisis where I was like, you know, all I've been thinking about for so long, because all I had to think about was kind of this one circle of a Venn diagram of my life, which is work, like my career. And then at the time, I had also these other Venn diagram circles that I needed to start to put them all together. I couldn't just look at one. I needed to see how they fit, you know, my relationship at the time, like planning a life there, how that is going to factor into my career, my personal aspirations, living in New York, having a dog, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like plants, like things that
Yeah.
are just my personal goals, and
Mm-hmm.
how do all those circles align? And I really struggled for a while because I realized very quickly that I'm not at a point where I can have them all align, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I definitely feel like it's really common in your pre-professional and like collegiate career. The transition between that and your professional career is the time where a lot of those feelings of insignificance and not feeling like you're good enough and insecurity are the most present and scary to deal with because you kind of have to come face to face with them. And like the drastic punch in the face shift of change and lifestyle, what has that done for you or to you, and how do you manage it?
Um, I mean, it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. I did a Q&A via Zoom when I was working in Cincinnati earlier this year with the graduating class that had been below me from the
Mm-hmm.
school that I
Yeah.
graduated from. And the teacher brought
Sick.
me in and I did a Zoom with them. Yeah, it was a great
That's
experience. And
great. Yeah.
basically, he was like, I want to have you come in and talk to the seniors about what your life has been because you've had consistent work, but I also want you to talk about having an agent and what that's like. 'Cause
Mm-hmm.
they're going to showcase, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that was great. But one of the people in that class asked me a question that I was not prepared for, which was, I have two offers right now. One of which is far away but pays me really well, and the other one is closer to where I'm at now with where a lot of my friends will be and where my family's at. But doesn't pay. It's not as good of a credit. Doesn't
Yeah.
pay as well. Whatever. What would you do? Um, and obviously at that point, I having previously in his shoes, not having had that question to ask, I just took the better job because I think for where I was at, that was more important. But I told him, I said, I would take the job if you really want to keep going in towards that aspect of your career. But having now been on the road traveling for so long, I really, you know, you and I, we met and that was great, an amazing friendship you like
Mm-hmm.
cherish. And there's a couple people like that at every gig that you work, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And
You
I've
can
been
only
fortunate
hope.
that I've met people here and
Mm-hmm.
there that have become really close friends of mine. But the people that I, you know, treasure and love, who I've been through thick and thin with for 4 years, lived with, my quote unquote like best of friends, they're not there.
Right.
They're thousands of miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Your partners, you know, if you're in a relationship, that's a factor. And in terms of how it affected me leaving school was just that. Like I really struggled mentally because even though I wasn't alone, it does
It's
feel
extremely
like you
lonely.
are alone. And it is very isolating. And there's a lot of internal guilt because I would then talk to a lot of those people. And of course, there's elements of every job that are problematic or whatever. You complain about
Right.
the job, but maybe they don't have one. And then you feel guilty about complaining
Mm-hmm.
about something that like the grass is always greener. They would
Yeah.
love to be in your shoes. So then you feel guilty about that. That weighs on you. And then there's internal guilt about talking about how you're feeling when you're feeling isolated. And there's just mental health as a whole, which,
Exactly.
anxiety and depression, but
Yeah,
those are all
totally.
factors as well.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about the loneliness aspect of doing tours and traveling for your work. Because I remember one of the first things that we like really spoke about with each other and our good friend Moses. Like one of the first things that you, Moses, and I chatted about was how fucking lonely we all were and trying to be
Yeah.
like real with each other. I don't even know what sparked or prompted it, but we were all just like, yeah, trying not to cry every single day.
Yeah.
And the gig that I did with you, that was my first gig post college.
Right.
And I had no experience or expectations in terms of how much this would affect me mentally, like being away and being completely alone. We all sort of supported each other through that process, and not having those close connections and those friends, like you said, there with us, even though they might be like digitally there. But it's just a whole different level of loneliness. And I think
Yeah.
even though we were there for each other and we did start hanging out more, whenever we would go home for the day,
Yeah.
it still weighed on us and
Oh, yeah.
entirely. And I think we were really lucky to have where Jack stayed was sort of like the hub where every actor in the show would kind of hang out
Yeah.
post show, or we would have our little like cast get-togethers there, and we were really lucky to have that space. Shout out to
Mm.
Terry.
Shout out
Love Miss
Terry.
Terry. But that was the space where we would have like group therapy sessions in front of that fucking fire pit.
The bonfire. Yeah.
Yes, the bond
Right.
fire.
Literally.
Literally. And we all just became so acquainted with each other's loneliness, but we were all there together being
Yeah.
lonely. And I think it was a beautiful but like, poignant experience that we were all able
Totally.
to bask in each other's like sadness, but like still
Yeah.
do
There's
it together.
camaraderie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Solidarity.
exactly. Solidarity. That was, and that's exactly it. It's not like you're alone because you
Mm-hmm.
have people, but at the end of the day, you still feel lonely
Yeah.
because specifically for you, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was 8.5 hours from my family and friends at the
Yeah.
very least, right? But you were a 3 days journey. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Oh
Like, I
yeah.
think there's also levels of distance with these
Mm-hmm.
jobs that play a factor in not only taking them, but how it then affects you in terms of the variations of that loneliness. Like
Yeah.
even if you go home at night and people would come over to my place or whatever, we'd all hang.
Mm-hmm.
That was nice for me, but you're still sleeping alone at night. You have a partner who's 3,000 miles away. Some people's families can't afford to travel and come
Yeah.
to see a show for a weekend in an expensive
Mm-hmm.
town.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's so then you say, I'm going to take this contract for 7 weeks or 9 months, knowing I am not going to be able to see these people. And so you have to basically say to yourself, one, can I do it? Two, is it worth it? And three, how do I prepare for that aspect of solitude? What levels of communication can we still have to keep up those friendships and partnerships? And family dynamics are tough already sometimes. And then you add
Mm-hmm.
in, time differences. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. And there's different levels too. At that gig, obviously, you're kind of living out of a bag for the duration of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like not couch hopping because you do have places or whatever, but
Right.
you never feel settled. And with a national tour or whatever, you're in a new hotel every 2 weeks, so already I'm here for 2 weeks. Great, I might as well just throw my stuff in the drawers because I know, and then I'm gonna leave again. But whatever. But with these other contracts, and that's just what that job is. And so even though it is 6, 7 weeks or 3 months, I mean, right now I'm here for 5 months, and you can see I put some of my shirts out and some of
Mm-hmm.
my pants out on like this like bookshelf that I'm staying in my sublet, and then I have a lot of my other stuff just in my closet in my bag still, and I'll
Yeah.
take it out as needed if needed because
Yeah.
why bother?
So here's the golden question. How do you take care of yourself when you are mentally struggling, or just when you're on tour and when you are working in the industry? How do you manage your self-care?
Oh, well, it's that's a hard question because I don't know that I always do,
Mm-hmm.
which is my
Real.
own problem. I mean, to be honest, sometimes I think it is my passion and it is also my career, but I love it. So it doesn't bother me.
Hmm.
But my anxiety has always manifested in a way where keeping myself busy, I guess, prevents me psychoanalyzing myself, but it prevents me from then having to just sit and stew and deal with my stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So by constantly working and applying to things and editing my reels or my
Hmm.
website or submissions, whatever. And then of course there's anxiety
Hmm.
about getting those things done, but I don't have to then kind of just sit with the other elements of my life. So when I'm in a point of personal turmoil, or like right now, to be transparent, my personal life has, as you know, not been the best. And ironically, my professional life has been going quite well. And so there's a real irony to me that the things that have been going well in my personal life are now kind of non-factors
Yeah.
or points of struggle. And then I have this beautiful thing where I'm like, well, I guess I'll just throw myself into my career because what else am I going to do? Like, I'll deal with that when I can, but as a way of not dealing with it, I'm just going to work harder um, to have other elements of joy, because I think, like we talked about earlier, there's elements of validation and accolade to receiving
Hmm.
callbacks and getting job offers that make you feel good. There's immense serotonin boosts when
Hmm.
you book things or have offers that have helped me to kind of put away a lot of the depressing aspects of other parts of my life, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. So, scary question, but what happens when you aren't working and like you aren't booking things? Like, does that completely take precedence in terms of your mental health, or are you able to manage it in other ways?
I'd like to think I'm able to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I'm in therapy. I think it's
Period.
necessary for everyone. Between gigs, when we left our gig
Mm.
and before I came here, I first read for this in a week and a half, and I just got home. So I'm going to be home with my family for a week and a half, which is the perfect amount of time. But in that week, I really went out of my way to try and not overbook myself. And I saw a few friends when I was home, but other than that, I didn't submit to anything. I didn't even look at the sites I would go through normally on the daily. And I allowed myself to just kind of be a couch potato. Like,
Yeah.
I just watched TV and did nothing. And in doing so, being alone with my thoughts and having nothing to do, of course, then comes that aspect of I should really be submitting to things.
Hmm.
I should really be like, I have no reason to not be working right now.
Yep.
Um, and that was really hard. I think one of the things that got me through was just a reminder that I had to kind of heed my own advice, which I never do because,
Real.
of course, yeah, right,
So
because of
real.
course, right. But I really tried, and I was like, you know what, you need to just take a beat. Your
Just
body has
take
been
a fucking
on
sec.
the brink. Yeah, your
Yeah.
body has been on the brink of a constant cliff for
Hmm.
the last year of your life, you know, with travel and jobs and shows and tech and whatever. Just breathe. And of course, the second I did that and I let myself relax, I got so sick.
Yeah.
um,
That's so
which
real.
happens, yeah, and I feel like it happens all the
All the
time with
time,
just
yeah.
like with jobs or whatever.
And you just like
But it
end
was
up sleeping
important.
for like a week. The
Literally
zinc
be watching movies
overload.
on
I
my
remember
fucking couch.
that. You said I literally took a
Yeah,
whole bottle of zinc today.
yeah, my thinking might even be a
Yes.
puppet. Elderberry.
Yes. But I relate to that and I find that I feel the most anxious and the most unworthy of happiness and goodness when I'm not doing anything. And I think I think that's a huge problem. In not just the industry, but in American culture, the grind mentality is so normalized. And that's like one of my main missions of my life is to be able to be a successful and working actor, but also to find joy and simplicity and
Mm-hmm.
slowness. I hope that someday people in the business can get to a place where we're able to accept that it's okay to not constantly be occupied with something, and it's okay to have a sense of self that isn't directly connected to performing or constantly working, and to be able to support yourself in all of the things that you love without deleting the other parts of your life that you also love and care for.
I think about that a lot too. I think there is something to be said in terms of like, okay, great. I'm going to use this period of time to relax, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is such a broad
Right.
generalization. But, you know, I still have to work to make money to pay for my
Mm-hmm.
rent, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to live wherever at home, or I'm going to live in a small area, a more rural, more natural, less,
Yeah.
hustle bustle, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Less
Um,
less
and yeah,
pollution.
real, so real. Yeah, literally less environment death,
Yeah.
and can still submit to things, but I'm only going to submit to things that I know if I book them, I would also get benefit from. Because I
Mm-hmm.
do think that while it is important to remind yourself it's okay and valid to take a break, which I need to take that own advice sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of benefits also to certain jobs. And we talked about it, the idea of like pros and cons to the MT
Mm-hmm.
grind. Same with jobs, same with relaxing, pros and cons
Mm-hmm.
to everything.
Absolutely. It's a
Um,
yin and yang sort of
right.
industry, like every
Yeah.
industry ever.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
That is what my editing software chose to save for you all today. Something that hasn't been touched on that Jack and I definitely spoke about, but the editing software deleted it. Being in an industry where there are so many workers and qualified people that deserve jobs, but they're not being enough, and having to work your fucking ass off to make ends meet, period, just to be able to survive and to pay rent and to afford food and shelter and basic necessities. Most people that I know have a day job, like a normal job or whatnot, a job that brings in a quote stable unquote income to be able to survive, and then at night go film self tapes or go to auditions or work on your craft. And that's typically a schedule of a person in the industry, a daily schedule. That's my schedule currently. I work from 5:15 in the morning to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and then I'm going to the gym and working on auditioning and submitting things and working on my reels and whatnot. Within that time frame, there isn't much time to do anything else besides grind because we have to. And I think that there is a lot of merit in being able to say that, yeah, we work our asses off every day to make ends meet and to get to a place where maybe somebody says yes after being rejected 10 times as much, if not more. And to be an actor is to grind. But as an actor with mental illness, I struggle sometimes with that. And it's either I struggle to tend to my mental health issues because I literally don't have time to, or they're bleeding into my work. So in order to support my balance finding journey, I'm going to start a new segment on the show called 5 Things I Did This Week to Support Myself and to Support My Soul. These aren't categorized or specific in any way. They're just things that I did that I felt took care of me. Maybe you can start your own list, because if you're like me, making lists and checking things off makes you feel great. I love making lists. Even if I don't check things off, I'm just like, the fact that I made this list right now made me feel good. So maybe it's something that you can incorporate into your routine. So the first thing that I did was I went to the movies by myself. I saw the Barbie movie again for the 3rd time for obvious reasons. I love going to the movies. I love going to the movies by myself. It's literally one of my favorite things ever. I love the act of sitting in a chair in a dark room that's usually cold as hell, watching cinema on a massive screen. It just is so, it appeals to all of my senses. The next thing I did was I made pumpkin cookies. I have such a massive sweet tooth, and I also love baking and cooking. And I had a can of pumpkin puree that I used to make overnight oats with, actually. I made pumpkin pie overnight oats. Yes, I'm a pumpkin pie and pumpkin spice girl. No shame whatsoever. I'm a pumpkin spice girl. I love pumpkin, and it's fall. So why wouldn't I make every single food dish that I eat flavored with pumpkin, you know? So I made pumpkin cookies with cream cheese frosting, and I burnt them a little bit, but they're still so good. They're so fluffy and gooey, and the icing is delicious and sweet, and just my mouth is watering thinking about them and speaking about them. So that was the second thing that I did. I did my laundry. I've been neglecting my laundry. I'm so bad at doing laundry. I don't know why. I have always been bad at laundry, and I always neglect to do it until it gets piled up massively. And I finally did it. Feels really good. Actually have clean towels and socks, you know? So I did my laundry, A plus for me. The cicadas are so loud right now. You can, yeah, you definitely can hear it because I can hear it in the headphones. Great. Sorry, Midwest living. The fourth thing that I did was I took my cat to the vet because he has been gaining weight like crazy. And that is in part because I feed him a little too much. I wouldn't say I overfeed him to the point where he's like extremely obese, but he's pretty chunk and he's only 3 and I want to make sure that he has a long and healthy life. So I took him to the vet to see about getting him on a diet program or to just inquire about what kind of diet foods the vet suggested. And I actually got him a new food and it seems to be working. He seems to be a lot happier and we've been going outside more. He loves outside. He's obsessed with going outside. And I'll just sit out there with him in the grass. I used to go out with him on a leash and a harness, but he won't run away. But yeah, I've been taking him outside unleashed and he's just chilling in the grass. He likes to eat the grass. So that's a really peaceful time of my day and something that I do to take care of myself and my cat because he is an extension of me. The last thing I did to take care of myself this week was I scheduled a doctor's appointment for a procedure that I really need to have done that I've been pushing off for no apparent reason. I keep forgetting to schedule it, but it's something that is really important to my health. So I finally got that scheduled and I'm going to the doctor soon. So that made me feel good and I felt like I was taking care of myself there. So those are the 5 things that I did this week to care for me. Let me know in the Q&A what you did to take care of yourself this week. I would love to hear. You can comment on my Instagram too, any of the posts, or DM me at Mental Health and Musical Theater. It would warm my heart to see what you guys did this week to take care of yourselves. Thanks for tuning in for episode 2. Soup's excited at how this is going so far. I'm glad that some people are enjoying it and I'm enjoying making it. Tune in next week for episode 3 on eating disorders in the industry. Super important topic. I will be talking a lot about my experience with eating disorders. So yeah, just prepare yourself for that if you have sensitivities and experiences with eating disorders. I know it can be very triggering and upsetting to hear sometimes about other people's experiences. If you have an eating disorder, you understand that it is extremely competitive with people that also have eating disorders, like not intentionally. It's just in your brain, you automatically will compare yourself to them. So I hope that you will be able to separate yourself from my experiences in that regard, but also I really hope that I can provide a sense of relatability and be able to talk about something that has impacted my life in so many ways. It's something that I could talk about it for days. It's a very important subject in my life and I have a lot to say about it. And I hope that it will be helpful. I'm going to be inserting a new resource today. The American Psychological Association has a crisis hotlines and resources page on their website. It has an entire list of hotlines and text lines all in one place. And these hotlines are more specific than just a mental health crisis text line. So I thought that this resource would be good to insert instead. You can find this resource on apa.org/topics/crisis hotlines. You are so important and your existence matters. There's always help out there, even if you don't feel like there is. You deserve it. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I'll be back next week. See y'all later. Bye.